I'm under quarantine. So, thinking this thing through, gravity and levity are electrical reactances. Now, sorry, I just ate and I always have this terrible well, not always, sometimes. Capacitive reactance is a monopole in and of itself. The only reason why we see two poles on a capacitor is because we have to hook it up to a circuit that is dipolar, meaning funded by current, which is expressive of inductive reactance. In other words, when you ground something electrostatically, you only pin it to the ground with one grounding point. Let's say it's a cable, the coax of a cable. You ground the coax of a cable only at one end if you electrostatically ground it. But if you electromagnetically ground it, you have to ground it, the coax shield at both ends of that cable. Now, I never thought much of that statement, although I thought it was very intriguing, but we can use that set of facts to carry this thing further and assume that capacitive reactance is inherently a monopole and inductive reactance is inherently a dipole. It's only under the influences of a dipolar inductive reactance that we put two poles on a capacitor. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to. But an inductor always needs two poles to itself. And that's why we have magnetism, which is equivalent to current, which is expressed by a coil, an electronic element called a coil, and the coil always has two ends. It has to. And a magnet has two poles, a positive and a negative pole. But capacitive reactance can actually split into two monopoles, each of its own polar relationship. And of course, you would need another pole, another capacitive, another dielectric pole to compare with the first one, because by themselves they'd have nothing to compare with because they're monopoles, right? Sorry. Now, in a capacitive, or I should say, in a dielectric situation, in an electrostatic situation, it's just like magnetism, exactly the same in that opposites attract. So if you have a positive voltage versus a negative voltage, they want to draw together. And that's gravity, right? Isn't that gravity? While like poles, no, wait, I shouldn't bring that up yet. While like charges repel, just like in magnetism, it's the same way in electrostatics. So it's really a question of, it's not a property of magnetism that we say, oh, like poles attract or repel and opposite poles attract. It's really a property of dipolarity, is what it amounts to, the dynamics of dipolarity, which means we're dealing with wave mechanics, simply put at that point. We're not dealing with any specific kind of wave except for the fact that it is a wave predicated on inductive reactance. Because when you think about it, a longitudinal wave is a monopole, isn't it? Well, then it wouldn't go anywhere. Ah, of course not, because it's already there. Of course. A longitudinal wave doesn't go anywhere because it's already there. That's why electrostatics is the way to communicate in the universe, because you can go faster than the speed of light. It doesn't take any time for voltage to distribute itself across the universe. Hardly any time at all. Sorry. So where was I going with this? Gravity. So now, what is gravity? Well, we have to ask the question, what is levity? Because you never get one by itself. They always come in pairs, and it's the net result of their blending that creates buoyancy, which supports the shell of this hollow planet away from its center of mass at an equidistant, more or less, range from that center of mass. So, I was guessing that gravity was, what was it again? No. Levity is capacitive react. Because, see, I'm trying to decide, I'm trying to decide what is a black hole, not defined in terms of quantum mechanics or quantum physics, but defined in terms of observation alone, and skip the quantum theory and use electrodynamic theory instead of quantum theory. So, what do we observe? We observe no light emanating from a black hole, which of course is not a hole, it's just a black body. No, we see no light emanating from a black body in space, yet we know it's there. So, why does the light not come out of it? Because there's no energy there. It's all reactive. The reactive components of energy have split apart, entirely so, for the most part, let's say, 99.99999%, and giving us capacitive reactance and inductive reactance, but not energy, light energy, that can radiate in any form, any light wave, any wavelength from that object, causing it to be called a dark body, a black body. It's there, it's got mass, but it's not a massive mass necessarily. See, that's the hinge problem. They always assume it's got to be a massive mass. Well, we create circuits that are highly efficient, and we don't make them efficient necessarily by making them bigger. Joseph Newman would have you believe so, but that's a lie. He left out the helium canister. Instead, he said, oh, you put a permanent magnet in there like I used to do. Yeah, that's massive, but if you use helium, which of course is lighter than air, it's not massive, and yet it gets the job done and fakes his presumption that it has to be massive. But massive is a lie, because it doesn't. His device does not become over unity the bigger you make it. It always falls behind the way he tells us to make it. But the way he made his was made with helium, and so they were over unity. Even a table model. His size had nothing to do with it. Come on. The one he sent to the patent office. The one that, the name of that physicist, I forget the guy's name. He measured a table model, and it was legitimately over unity. It sent 0.5 ampere back to the battery pack to recharge them. So come on. Size does not count. So, why is a black body black? It's not because of mass. It's because there's no energy there. It's all reactance. 100% or nearly so, all reactance. Now, so what does that mean in terms of gravity? So I was trying to take a guess, estimate, and it cannot, see, if we think about it, it cannot be inductive reactance, because if it's dipolar, it's always going to want to flip and invert into its opposite state. So it could be that gravity and levity are the two monopoles of capacitive reactance. In other words, it's two singular monopoles in which, if we compare them across the emptiness of space, they have different electron volt charges, differing from each other, such that if they were connected, they would no longer be capacitive reactance, they would be inductive reactance, right? But still a single line. So consequently, it's still reactance. You would need a return loop to make it energy. It needs to be a circular loop to be energy. That's why we say I'm sorry. I hate this. I don't like to overdo the cayenne pepper, though, because it gives me a burning belly. So I just took the minimum. Sorry, you're going to have to plow through this. So that's why we say the electron shell around a atom, being circular, makes allowance for the electron going into orbit around the center, which is a loop, which is energy, which is the electromagnetic spectrum coming out of that atom, giving us electromagnetic radiation, such as light or X-rays or whatever. So, but it's only the loop that is energy. Anything short of a loop is not energy. It's reactance. And you can either have a Yeah, you can either have two monopoles connected in space, probably for only a brief period. Yeah, and then you have them separated for as long as they can remain that way. Now, so buoyancy must be that interconnection between monopoles of differing electron volt charges. But if there's no momentary connection between unlike charges, their interaction across empty space would be a question of whether or not they attract or repel. So in a sense, we have a virtual dipole is what we have between monopolar capacitive reactance poles, in that if two like charges would repel, while two unlike charges would attract. That means the pole, the capacitive reactant monopole at the center of the Earth, in the center of the vacuous center of the hollow Earth, would have to be artificially induced somehow and maintain itself. Artificial in the sense that it's not the same as atomic matter. No, that doesn't make any sense. No, atomic matter is a dipole anyway. So it would have to be neutral then. Right. That's why it floats in the center. Okay. Oh, you know what that means? Oh, shit. Why didn't I ever think of that before? It's like a dual star system. Of course, a binary star. At the center of the hollow Earth is a binary star in which one star is positive capacitive reactance and the other is negative capacitive reactance, in the sense that they are simply two different electron volt values. But they have to be, the net value between them has to be equal to the singular value of atomic matter. So whatever the capacitive, the atomic matter surrounding it, let's put it that way. So the atomic matter of the shell of the planet Earth has one electron volt charge shared among them all. Oh my God, this is so ridiculously simple. It has nothing to do with physics. Because you can charge up matter with an electron volt charge. Good grief. Except in the center of the planet, they're separated into a whirling dervish of a pair of a binary system of stars, shall we say, or conglomerations of energy, each of which is capacitive reactant in nature, but they differ from each other by the same amount but in opposite values to the mean average of what the planet Earth is geared to. So let's say the planet Earth is 100 volts. That means that one capacitive reactant pole, or conglomeration of energy, shall we say, in the center of the Earth, is, let's say, 150 electron volts, while the other is 50. And the average between them is 100, and that's equal to the net value of the charge of the crust, or I should say the shell of the Earth. For some reason, they're kept separate from each other, and they just swirl around in a mutual orbit. They orbit each other, which is a pretty delicate balance when you think about it, because they have to maintain their separation. What happens if they came together? They'd probably form energy and matter and blow up the planet, because their union would be a highly emotional state, and they would just go kaboom. Probably it would be a release of energy and matter all at once that would be so disorganized and disruptive that for one thing, the planet would no longer have its stabilizing force. So even if it didn't blow up, it would simply lose its stabilizing force. So you see, the structure of the universe is predicated on electrical reactance. We can't use it to spend, but as anybody knows in the field, in this field of learning, you have to use reactance to charge up a coil. And you're just borrowing it. You send it back to the source, but you don't get to spend it, but you have to use reactance. You can't use energy. because the coil is going to turn some of that energy into reactants to charge itself up with anyway, and not spend that reactants and accumulate it. Meanwhile, it's spending the energy. So you're going to end up with reactants predominating within the coil, and energy is just passing through. I'm just passing through, just coming through. I'm on my way out. So that's how planets hold together, and that's what gravity is. Gravity is not gravity, it's buoyancy. Now, so you get an object in space. So everybody claims it's, now let's go back to mass. Everybody claims it's mass. Okay. And objects of heavier mass, neutron, you know, like lead versus, carbon, has a different mass. But what if it's something else? What if the electron voltage is different too, and we've overlooked that? How much you want to bet that's what it is? Oh my God. I have to do this. I have to ask. Let me put the foot down, the phone. Let me put the phone down. What is the electron voltage of lead? Let's see what we get here. Electric, don't see lead yet. Speed of an electron, no, we don't want that. Lead. Oh, here we go. Wikipedia article on lead. Maybe that'll tell us. Because if each substance has its own electron voltage, then that would explain gravity right away. I mean, you know, the Earth has its dominant electron net voltage based on all the different substances, what the average is among them, and then yeah, but that doesn't explain why carbon would. No, yeah, you're right. Well, let's see, electron configuration. Maybe that's all a neutron number is. It's electron volts. Vapor pressure, atomic properties, electronegativity. Ooh, Pauling scale 1.87 plus 2. Covalent radius. Ionization energies? No, that's not what we want. So the Pauling scale, the electronegativity of lead. Oh, I think there's a whole article on electronegativity. See? There's got to be a chart. It is a concept, tends the event to attract a shared pair of electrons towards itself, affected by its atomic number and the distance at which its valence electrons reside from the charged nucleus. The higher the associated electronegativity, the more an atom or a substance attracts electrons toward itself. Nuclear charge, the more protons an atom has, the more pull it will have on electrons. Oh my God. And the number and location of other electrons present in the atomic shells. Farther from will be, as a result, the less positive charge they will experience, both because of their increased distance and because the other electrons in the lower energy core orbitals will act to shield the valence from the no, that's the opposite is electropositivity, a measure of an element's ability to donate electrons. Pauling scale. Dimensionless quantity. Pauling electronegativity. Mulliken electronegativity. Ah, now we got scales here. So hydrogen is 2.20. And when we get to lead, where are you, lead? What's the symbol for lead? Yoo-hoo, lead. Where are you? Isn't it LB? No, PB, excuse me. PB. Okay, where are you, PB? PU, PA, HGPT, PB, 1.87. So it varies. It doesn't, when it goes up the neutron number, it's not else, because it's interacting with the electron shell. Yeah, like mercury is 2.0. Oh, that's kind of, ooh, calcium is 1. Holy shit. So calcium should be very lightweight. And they say that's what Edward Leedskalnin built his coral castle out of, oolitic limestone. And they built the pyramids. The base, the core of the pyramids in Egypt are aren't they limestone, capped with granite? No, now I can't remember. Because it would be easier to levitate calcium substance than something else. What's silica? Well, silica's higher. Silica is 1.9 electron volts. So, no, wait, that would make it wait a minute. Hydrogen, huh? Uh-oh. Where's lead again? 1.87. No, that's right. Oh, so hydrogen is heavy? So the higher the electron volt number, the heavier it is. You know why? Because then you can separate the charges at the center of the planet more readily into two groups. You can have a greater diversity between them and get away with it. And that means you can end up with a larger planet in size, and then thus we can assume, erroneously, the planet is more massive. No, it's not. It's simply more spacious because the electron voltage is higher, allowing for greater disparity between the two binary capacitive reactant stars in orbit around each other. Now, there's certain ones that don't have any electron volt number, like helium, neon, argon. Now, this is interesting because helium is used in the Joseph Newman motor to create electrical reactance. So that, and neon bulbs act as negative resistors. So, apparently, when you want an electrical circuit producing free energy based on the chemistry alone, you want a substance that has no electronegative number associated with it. That's very interesting. So this is the Pauling scale. Now, let's look at, is there somebody else's scale here? See also electronegativities of the elements data page. You know, sometimes Wikipedia is pretty good, but I don't like their opinions. Periodic table of electronegativity by Pauling scale. Okay. Oh, this is the same thing all over again. Wait a minute. Okay. So hydrogen has... Oh, they don't... What's this? Sort ascending. Oh, that would be nice. No data. Ooh, what's this? Fluorine is the heaviest. Holy shit, I thought lead was the heaviest. Where's lead? Lead's way down there, 82. Oh no, 82 is the number, the atomic number. Okay, so 3.98 is for fluorine, and oxygen. Argon? I thought argon didn't have. Whose scale is this? I thought argon didn't have it. I was mistaken. Okay, it just didn't list it. That's the problem. The helium might be here somewhere. Somewhere, I don't know, I can't see it. Anyway, ooh, wow, aluminum's weight. Now, we consider aluminum to be lightweight, yet it has a 1.61, which is not light at all. Oh, lightweight. Right, because the higher number is heavier, that's right. So aluminum gets lighter, and then all these are very rare earth elements. Calcium's even lighter, though, than aluminum. Who makes, potassium's even lighter still, and sodium. Francium is the lightest. Oh, there's no data. Well, that doesn't help. Okay, forget that. Helium, there's no data. Oh, there's simply no data for helium and neon. Well, that doesn't help. And radon. Okay, so the lightest we have data is cesium. Rubidium is not far behind. Anywho. Oh, no, we got Allen's scale. Hydrogen is 2.3. Oh my god, helium is 4.1. Neon is 4.8-ish. Neon seems to be the heaviest. Oh yeah, they got it color-coded. That's good. Francium is down at the bottom, like before. So helium is actually the heaviest. So actually, according to the Allen scale, so the more electronegative it is, right, the more reactants, because when it divides up, you have greater force between them. See, I knew it. So your gravity and your levity is more pronounced. That means you can end up with a bigger, right. Isn't the sun made up of a lot of helium and some other stuff? Yeah, it's got a neon plasma as part of its photosphere. Let's see, silicon. It also has silicon. Well, it's 1.9 for silicon. That's right. So it's not because it's hotter. It's because, that's just a side, and that's, yeah, it's because, oh my God, this is unbelievable. It's remarkable. So here we have free energy in an atomic sense, chemically speaking, or whatever, in an atomic sense. And it's amazing. It all has to do with electronegativity. Let's see, are there any other scales? So I like the Allen scale because at least we have more data. No, what's going on here? Oh, they do it. Okay, symbol, electronegativity. So let's do it this way. Yeah, huh? Neon. Oh, I'm sorry, not helium. Neon is the heaviest. And then fluorine, and then helium, and then oxygen, and then argon. Oh, oxygen, water, you know, there's a lot of oxygen on this planet. Yeah, I like this article. This is cool. So that was Allen's scale, the Allen scale. Wow. So if you want to build, okay. So anyway, so those are my thoughts, but let's see if I can recall now what I stated. So, yeah. So what we assume to be gravity is, you know, when we walk around on the surface of the planet, it's not gravity at all. It's buoyancy because it's the net result of gravity and levity. While an object falling to the surface, let's say, somebody releases a cannonball, that has a certain electronegativity. Yes, keep going. Oh dear. So it really matters what if the two reactances in the center of the Earth stopped swirling and became matter, what would they be? Would they be the same matter as what's out here? The only difference is they've split. You know what? So it's not a nuclear furnace, that's right. It's kind of like a dynamo, but it's not exactly. It's a reactive dynamo. Because it's not energy. Which means it would be black. We wouldn't see it. That's right. Oh, there you go. A black body is simply the same thing as a hollow planet except without the shell. See, the shell reflects light, and in the case of Jupiter, it actually emits a little bit of light, and of course a star definitely emits light. But if there's no shell to block our view of the reactant center of a hollow sphere, then all you have is the core swirling around, creating reactants, and of course it's going to be black, because there's no radiation. There's no electromagnetic transverse wave-oriented radiation to see, to measure. Because it's lossless, right? Reactive power is lossless energy, so you can't lose it. It can't radiate. It cannot radiate. Yet it can swirl, apparently, as a pair of dipoles that are not, they're loosely coupled. You know, that's really what it comes down to. If you have a strong coupling between 2 points in a circuit, you have a hard connection, you know, a piece of wire connecting them. But a loose coupling, it's like an aerial, like two aerials, like the broadcast aerial of a radio station and the receiving aerial of a transistor radio. That's a loose coupling there because you've got empty space between them. You might have ionization going on, which means you've got a semi-hard coupling, but it's still semi-loose. If you had a vacuum between them, you definitely have a loose coupling, and then it's just a question of their proximity in determining the intensity of their interactions. So it's a loose coupling between the two swirling binary stars, shall we say, of reactive power in the internal inside of the Earth. And there's simply two voltages that are extremely diverted from the mean center, which is the voltage, the conglomerate average voltage volt average of the entire surface of the planet, the shell of the planet that surrounds them. So again, what's gravity? Okay. Oh, so gravity then is a dipolar capacitive reactance because it involves attraction towards the center of mass of two swirling opposite poles that are swirling around each other. Levity, on the other hand, what would levity be? It'd have to be artificially produced, wouldn't it? So, naturally speaking, you can only get, by default, you can only get gravity. And that's why we see gravity and we don't see levity. So levity is an artificial construction. It would have to be. Just like over unity is an artificiality. It's not that over unity doesn't exist, it's just that it's artificial, artificially induced. So, that's why, oh my God. The laws of physics, the laws of thermodynamics are default laws. They are natural laws. They are predicated on the default condition of the universe. If left to itself, that's what it does. Gravity, no free lunch. But it is possible with modern technology to create an artificially man-made construction which is temporary and has to be maintained and serviced because it's artificial. By nature, artificiality means you have to maintain it and service it to keep it going, which means it's not entirely free if you want to be a real anal person to argue against free energy. But it is anti-gravity and it is over unity. But it is artificial. That makes perfect sense. So what is the artificial condition? That would be the next question to ask. Because it has to be sufficient to create over unity and levity. And you need over unity because you need a lot of energy to compensate for a UFO overcoming inertia, let alone overcoming the gravity of the Earth, let's say, if it's hovering around the surface of the Earth. Plus, you have to define it in such a way that when you turn it into gravity, you can now submerge that UFO against the buoyancy of water and make it go underwater, despite the fact that it's the buoyancy of the air inside the UFO is going to want to buoy it up to the surface and float on the surface. So my thinking is not complete on this. It doesn't tell me what levity is. It tells me what gravity is, which is basically what we already know. So I'm not saying anything new. I'm sweeping aside physics and in its place defining gravity in terms of electrodynamics. But I still have yet to define levity. Well, whatever it is, it's what the shell of the planet is doing, partly so, because it's buoyant. So it's a blend between levity and gravity. So what would be inherent? You know what? It must be inherent in the monopolar nature of each of the two swirling objects in the center of the planet with regard to what's going on in the center of an atom. We get right back to atomic nuclei. What's going on in an atomic nuclei? Oh. How much you want to bet hydrogen atomic number is not one after all, it's 2. Because Mendeleev had proposed 2 proto-atomic elements, pre-hydrogen elements. He named them X and Y for lack of a better term. And those are the 2 so-called neutrons that are swirling around each other inside a hydrogen atom. Because you need a minimum of 2 to create matter. Anything less than that is reactance. Because matter is equivalent to energy, right? So if you don't have energy, you can't have matter. But that doesn't mean you have nothing. It means you have reactance. Monopolar opposites in sign value of capacitive reactance. It has to be capacitive, because capacitive is the only type. The dielectrical type is the only variety that can be monopolar. And that would explain Edward Leedskalnin's little magnets of monopolar south and monopolar north poles going in opposite directions around in the circuit. Not interfering with each other at all, but they do go in opposite directions. So the circuit makes it a continuous circuitous loop, but the poles themselves are monopoles, and they like to go in opposite directions. This might explain levity. No, that explains gravity. Wait a second here. Oh, neutralization of inertia, right, was mechanical reciprocation along the spin axis of a dual electromagnetic spin of a pair of opposite spins. That's right. So that's what they're doing. That's right. They're spinning in opposite directions because they're swirling around each other. Oh, they're not swirling around each other. They're swirling through each other because they're going in opposite directions. Oh, this is bizarre. What's the plane? What determines the plane of the ecliptic, or not the ecliptic, the plane of the orbital plane of such a deal? Well, we know what it is. In iron, it's perpendicular to the magnetic poles of that iron, because you have to align them in order to get magnetism. Otherwise, if they're oriented all which way, you get no magnetism. Even though the energy is still there, the magnetic energy hasn't left. It's just not organized into a polar object, a magnetically dipolar object. So the 2 reactant monopoles in the center of the planet are swirling around in opposite directions, into each other, through each other. And they create gravity, which is the same as inertia, which is the same as the ability for the planet to orbit the sun at a constant rate, more or less, to have momentum. Okay. Oh, my God, it's so simple, it should be obvious. Any ice skater knows the answer, or anybody who, yeah. An ice skater or a rollerblade skater, if you want to twirl faster, you pull your arms in. If you want to slow down, you pull them out. So if you want to increase gravity for a UFO to make it submerge underwater, the 2 electrostatic spins within the levitational propulsion device of the UFO have to come in closer together. That's all. Which means they also increase their speed, too, because that's what a skater does. She increases her speed of rotation when she pulls her arms in. And that's the increase of gravity. with respect to the ice skater, using the ice skater as her own point of reference to herself, with regard to herself. Which means that these atomic numbers or electron volt numbers, they're heavier because the spin is closer together, which means it's faster, right? It's a faster frequency. That's right. A faster spin rate. So that's all you do. You just change your spin rate, and then you find that causes the craft to find its happy medium, its point of buoyancy from the center of mass of the planet. Now, how you move around sideways, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that. And I won't worry about it at the moment. The main thing I have to do is define gravity and its opposite of levity and the interaction between the two that we call buoyancy. Because if you understand those three relationships, you might get a beginning of understanding how UFOs move around. It doesn't tell us how it moves tangential to a center of mass of an object, but at least it's a start. And it explains gravity in terms of electrodynamics. And it explains black bodies. How about that? Sounds pretty cool, huh?